some surprises there, and importantly, where the weak spots might still be in the supply chain.
Yeah, there are still challenges.
Absolutely. So let's start with the basics, just to be clear on the tech we're discussing and why making it is, well, such a big deal.
Sounds good.
When we talk solar tech, there are two key bits, the solar cell and the solar module. We know the basics, but industrially, making one versus the other is a whole different ballgame.
Oh, absolutely. That distinction is crucial for understanding the whole policy approach. The solar cell. That's the small individual unit, the photovoltaic piece.
The bit that actually does the magic, converting light to electricity.
Precisely. And making that requires incredibly sophisticated manufacturing. Think ultra-clean rooms, complex processes. It's where the real high-tech challenge lies.
Okay, and the module.
The module of the panel, what you actually see installed, it's basically a bunch of those cells put together, framed, wired up, laminated, ready to generate power for a house or a big solar farm.
Right.
And initially, India was okay at assembling modules, putting the pieces together, but making the actual cells competitively,
Right.
cheaply enough. That capability just wasn't really there.
And that gap, that industrial challenge, that led to this strategic decision, right? That India needed, well, full control over the whole process, industrial independence in solar.
Yes, a conscious choice.
And that's where the policies really started doing the heavy lifting, starting with that production-linked incentive scheme, the PLI. We hear a lot about that.
The PLI was absolutely key. Sort of the engine, really. It was designed to tackle that huge initial cost barrier the capital needed.
Okay.
It wasn't just straightforward subsidies, though. It was clever, performance-based. So companies got cash incentives based on how many cells and modules they actually manufactured domestically.
Ah, so output linked.
Exactly. That really helped de-risk those massive initial investments for the big industrial players.
Okay, so that's the carrot, the incentive. But then you needed something to protect these new homegrown companies from just being swamped by cheaper imports, right?
Absolutely. You needed the stick as well. And that's where the trade barriers came in. The government gradually, but systematically, increased customs duties on imported solar cells and especially modules.
I saw that duty went up quite a bit recently on modules.
Yeah, up to 30% on modules now.
Wow.
That helps level the playing field, making the price gap between imports and domestic products much smaller, giving local companies a fighting chance.
Right. And then there's the quality aspect. You don't want to just make stuff. You want to make good stuff. That brings us to the third piece, that ALMM list, approved list of models and manufacturers.
Yes, the ALMM, critically important. What it did was mandate that any big government-funded solar project, and that's a huge chunk of the market in India, had to use panels from manufacturers on this approved list.
Ah, okay. So that created a guaranteed market.
Exactly. Two key things happened. One, it created this massive, reliable domestic market for Indian manufacturers. And two, it forced quality control. It stopped low-quality, maybe heavily subsidized foreign panels from flooding the market and ensured Indian companies were building products good enough to compete globally. World-class stuff.
So the government set up this framework, the incentives, the protection, the quality control. Did the industry actually bite? Did they respond? The numbers? Well, they seem pretty dramatic. Let's look at that capacity growth.
Oh, the response was huge. Staggering, really. Back in 2014, India's total capacity for making solar modules was tiny, about 2.3 gigawatts GW.
Which is basically nothing on a global scale.
A rounding error, exactly. But fast forward to today, thanks to those policies we talked about, that capacity has just exploded. It's now over 100 gigawatts.
100 gigawatts. Just to give people a sense of scale, that's enough capacity to compete with the total amount of solar power installed in several large European countries combined. It's not just a big number for India, it's globally significant.
It signals genuine self-reliance in a critical sector. And look, this wasn't just the government throwing money around. This needed massive buy-in from the private sector.
Right. Who are we talking about?
India's industrial heavyweights. Companies like Reliance, Adani, Vedanta, Tata Power, Wary Energy. They've all poured billions into building these huge gigafactories.
And when you see those kinds of names, the big long-term players investing that heavily.
It tells you this isn't just some temporary trend. It's a fundamental shift in the industrial landscape. They see a long-term future here.
And presumably, that investment is doing what it was supposed to do, pushing out the foreign suppliers. We're seeing dependency drop.
We are seeing that, yes. If you look at the numbers for, say, the first 8 months of this current financial year, 2024-25,
Yeah.
solar cell imports dropped around 20%, but module imports down significantly, about 57%.
57%. That's a massive drop. But how much of that is just India using its own stuff because it needs so much power internally versus actually displacing imports that would have come in otherwise?
It's definitely a mix, but the ALMM rule is key here. Because those big Indian projects have to use Indian modules now, that drives a lot of that domestic consumption you
Yeah,
mentioned.
got it.
But the very fact that domestic companies can now meet this huge internal demand, well, that shows the capacity is real. They've effectively replaced the need for a huge volume of foreign goods. And that's really the definition of self-reliance here.
Okay, this is where the story takes another turn there, because it's not just about India supplying itself anymore. It's moving from self-reliance to becoming a real global player. India's exporting this stuff now. This is maybe phase 2 of the revolution. In the last financial year, 2023-24, India exported something like 5.8 GW of solar modules globally.
5.8 GW exported. And how does that compare?
That number is nearly 3 times what they exported the year before. So it's accelerating rapidly. They're really pushing the export strategy now.
And the biggest buyer, this surprised me, is the U.S. buying almost $2 billion worth.
Almost 1.94 billion, yeah. The United States.
That feels like a fundamental shift in global trade flows, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The U.S., a tech leader itself, is now buying critical energy hardware from India,
Yeah.
a country that, like we said, was just assembling kits a few years back.
It's a big geopolitical win, you could say, and it's tied into that whole global trend of diversifying supply chains.
Ah, the China plus one idea?
Exactly. As countries, especially the U.S., look to reduce their dependence on, well, primarily China, India has very smartly positioned itself as a credible, large-scale alternative.
And it's not just the U.S. buying. No, Indian modules are now going to Europe, Africa, Latin America. You see them in Nepal, Bangladesh, Kenya, Nigeria. India is really establishing itself as an international energy tech supplier now.
Okay, this sounds almost too good to be true. Pure success. But usually with these rapid industrial shifts, there are some hidden weaknesses, some vulnerabilities. Let's talk about India's potential Achilles heel here, the parts of the supply chain they don't yet control.
Right. And there is a significant one. The vulnerability is really upstream. It's
Yeah.
in the absolute basic ingredients.
Okay.
So while India is doing great making the finished panels, the modules, the really critical raw materials that form the sort of backbone of those modules, they're still mostly imported.
What materials are we talking about specifically?
We're talking high-purity polysilicon, the silicon wafers made from it, and specialized solar glass. These are still overwhelmingly sourced from outside India.
Mostly China.
Primarily China, yes, and a few other specialized producers. So India makes the final product, but the essential lifeblood, the stuff that dictates price and availability, that's still largely foreign controlled.
Why are those specific materials so tough to make domestically? What's the barrier?
Well, it really comes down to a few things. Massive scale, huge capital investment, and energy intensity. Polysilicon production especially, that needs enormous, continuous, high-tech chemical refining.
Right.
And it consumes vast amounts of very reliable, very cheap electricity.
Right.
Building those plants costs billions upfront and needs huge ongoing energy commitments.
And China got ahead on that.
China invested heavily in this decades ago, built up incredible scale, which makes it incredibly hard for newcomers to compete on price. Until India masters that polysilicon and wafer stage, it's still somewhat exposed to global prices and potential supply disruption.
This isn't just theoretical, right? This vulnerability is actually causing some issues now, especially with the U.S., their biggest customer.
Absolutely. We're seeing it play out. The U.S. is applying really strict checks on solar modules coming in from India. They want incredibly detailed traceability